La, 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 la. I hope you're all well rested and excellent. You are great. I'm not, but Reggie, start. Back to put a little discipline in this room. All right. Have a travel announcement to make. The Secretary General will be arriving in Geneva in the evening, where he will take part the following day on the International Conference on Climate Resilient Pakistan. The conference is being co-hosted by the government. The conference aims to generate financial and international support for those impacted by last year's devastating floods in Pakistan and to rebuild damaged infrastructure in a climate resilient manner. In his remarks at the conference, the Secretary General will call for support to strengthen the resilience of the communities in Pakistan for the future, while in Geneva, scheduled to hold a joint press conference with the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Shehbaz Sharif. You'll be able to follow that live on the webcast. It will be early morning in New York. And the Secretary General will then fly back to New York from Geneva, and he will be back here on the evening of the 9th of January. Senior personnel announcement to share with you. Today, the Secretary General is appointing Lieutenant General Otavio Rodriguez de Miranda Filho of Brazil as the new force commander for the UN peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. He succeeds Lieutenant General Marco da Afonso da Costa, also of Brazil, to whom the Secretary General is deeply grateful for his important contributions and to the service of the UN peacekeeping in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Lieutenant General Miranda Filho has several years of experience in command and control structures in the Brazilian Army. More information online. And I have a few peacekeeping updates to share with you from our various missions. First, in the DRC, the UN peacekeeping mission in the DRC is telling us that its Force Intervention Brigade has launched a joint operation with the Congolese Army. The operation aims to bolster ongoing efforts to protect civilians and to neutralize armed groups in the areas along the Beni, Mulike, Mango, Nobile axis in North Kivu. The UN peacekeepers are also undertaking patrols along that axis to improve security, allow freedom of movement of the population and security forces, and to help with the return of internally displaced people. Just north of that, in the Central African Republic, UN peacekeepers there have also concluded a joint mission with the Central African Security Forces to better protect people in the country's west. Over a period of 1 month, peacekeepers conducted over 100 patrols and 30 aerial surveillance missions. They patrolled several localities, including the Bosangoa, Nanabakasa, Markunda, and Pawa. Military peacekeepers, also accompanied by civilian colleagues, provided medical services, distributed school equipment, and shared information about the threats of improvised explosive devices. Overall, the past week, UN peacekeepers carried out over 1,800 patrols to engage the population and better understand their concerns. This included long-range patrols in the east as well as the central region. Meanwhile, as part of our support, provided security by escorting personnel from the National Election Authority in the Wampende prefecture. Our peacekeeping mission in Abyei, otherwise known as UNISFA, has responded rapidly to quell violence in the village of Umamur in the southern part of Abyei. After an early morning attack that took place today, it resulted in 13 people being killed, 5 injured, and 27 homes being burned to the ground. UNISFA reports that an armed group of approximately 200 cattle herders were responsible for the violence. Peacekeepers deployed immediately to provide physical protection to the villagers and are continuing to patrol the area to prevent further attacks and facilitate the safe return of civilians who fled. The mission has also launched an investigation into the incident. The acting head of the peacekeeping mission, Brigadier General Abu Syed Mahmoud Bakir, strongly condemned the attack and called on all stakeholders to end violence and fully engage in the peace process. Just south of that, in South Sudan, our peacekeeping mission there, UNMISS is continuing to respond to the volatile security situation in the Greater People Administrative Area and Jonglei following violence that began late in December, with the most recent clashes impacting communities in Libreville. UNMISS is working with local authorities and faith-based leaders to encourage armed youth to return to their places of origin. Its human rights team is also investigating violations committed during the clashes and advocating the release of abducted women and children. UNMISS leadership is working with national and state authorities to help de-escalate tensions in Jonglei, as well as Upper Nile State, where the mission is convening an important peace conference in where and Shuluk. Quick humanitarian update. This one from Mali. Martin Griffiths, our head of humanitarian affairs, has allocated $7 million from the Central Emergency Response Fund to support people impacted by insecurity in the country's north. The funds will help provide life-saving assistance to 423,000 people, including internally displaced people, refugees, and host communities in the Gao, Kidal, and Mopti regions. The new allocation will support projects for education and protection, as well as areas of health, water, hygiene, shelter, and psychological assistance. As you are aware, humanitarian needs in Mali are dire as the country faces a multidimensional crisis. This year, humanitarians will need $868 million to help 6.2 million people. Just two more quick notes. In his message for the new year, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, is calling on the release of people in prison for exercising their human rights. As we begin the year, it will mark the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Mr. Turk is asking governments and all detaining authorities globally to amnesty, pardon, or simply release all those detained for exercising their right to end arbitrary detention once and for all. And today is World Braille Day, celebrated since 2019. The day aims to raise awareness for the importance of Braille in the context of education, freedom of expression and opinion, as well as social inclusion, as reflected in Article 2 of the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. James.
Yes, can I ask, first, the Security Council is going to have a meeting tomorrow on the situation in the Middle East, following the developments that we talked about in yesterday's press briefing, the visit by Israel's new National Security Minister to the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, and with some of the statements that you know that Prime Minister Netanyahu has made. What is the UN doing on the ground diplomatically? And what is your reaction to the Security Council meeting?
Well, I mean, if the Security Council has a meeting, we'll ask to brief you, of course. Who will provide a briefing? I checked with my colleagues about 2 hours ago. We still didn't have clarity, but we will have someone. As far as I understand, contacts, working level contacts with between our UNSCO colleagues and the Israeli government is continuing.
Mr. Wennesland is involved in this context. Is he in position, on post?
He will be, I think, back in Jerusalem tomorrow. Very clear.
Surely he shouldn't be on holiday at a time like this. I mean, he seems to be missing in action. We've been looking through his website. He hasn't. There's no statement on his website since the 10th of October. The last thing he tweeted was December the 29th, congratulating President Netanyahu. Does he still congratulate President Netanyahu when he's heard some of the comments he's made about settling land all across Israel, including occupied territories?
James, I understand what you're saying. Missing in action. I know he's been in contacts with his colleagues, and as I said, he's on his way back to Jerusalem. We will continue to. I mean, there's a new government in Israel. We will continue to interact with them. James, let me finish. And we will continue to advocate for the same ideals and the same goals as we've had in the past.
And has the Secretary General had any contacts on this issue?
On this issue, none that I can report. Deji?
Actually, James asked some of my questions. So I know. Farhan had already answered this question yesterday, but can you alliterate the position from the Secretary General on the issue of the
I will repeat what Mr. Hawk said yesterday. Uh, Secretary General reiterates the importance of upholding the status quo in line with the special role of the Kingdom of Jordan, and he calls on all to refrain from steps that could escalate tensions in and around Jerusalem's holy sites.
Okay, so my question is, there's news from Poland that the Polish government is seeking for the reparation of World War II from Germany, and they said they might request a meeting with the UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, to discuss this very issue. Has the UN received any request from the Polish side?
We have, as far as we checked a bit earlier this morning, we had not received any written letters, at least through the usual channels. But we'll check again.
Since this institution is established after World War II, does the Secretary General had anything to say on this reparation request?
Not at this point.
Madame.
Merci. Somalie. The 46 Ivorian soldiers have been sentenced to 20 years in prison. The 3 women were sentenced to death, despite West African head of state urging Bamako to release them by January 1st or face sanction. I know, and I'm sure that your Secretary General might be deeply concerned about it, but can he do something? Is he doing something to get them released?
We're obviously extremely aware of this case. We have been following it closely. We have been in touch with many people involved. We remain willing to provide any necessary support to ensure that the detained soldiers return home. I would also, since you mentioned the death penalty, is worth reiterating our absolute stand against the death penalty anywhere. Yep.
Olivier Salgado, yes. Did he find a new job? Because it was not his fault when he was.
I'm fully aware of the
yeah,
reasons.
But what happened to him?
I'm fully aware of the reasons why Mr. Salgado was asked to leave. I'm not in the habit of discussing private personnel issues from here. Betul and then Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Steph. I'm going to ask about Ukraine. The Turkish president is scheduled to talk to President Zelensky and the Russian president, Putin, today. And I'm just wondering if the SG has anything planned after that phone call between the 3 leaders takes place.
Well, we have, I think, throughout this war, the President Erdogan, Turkish authorities have been very good about sharing information from these phone calls, and I'm sure we will have contact with the Turkish authorities afterwards. I will share with you what we get. I will share with you afterwards. I'm not. I don't know if there's anything specifically planned.
Thank you, Steph. Happy New Year first. I have 2 questions.
Let's hope.
First, does Mr. Winsland need to be in place to issue a tweet or a statement?
I think
such major developments. How can anyone justify his side? That's one thing. That's my first question. And my second, Israel bombed the airport in Syria on Monday morning, killing 3 people and shutting down the airport. There was no statement or any comment on this development.
I think on Mr. Venislan, we are reporting and we're continuing to report to the Security Council, and we continue to speak on this issue as Farhan did yesterday, and I am doing again today as we speak on behalf of the Secretariat. I have no. we keep seeing media reports of increased violence in different parts of Syria. We would like to see an end to that. And we would like to see all the parties recommit to the political efforts led by Mr. Oh God, I've been on vacation. Pedersen. Please don't tell him that I blanked on his name.
But
Okay,
the question wasn't about the
I know, but we have no forensic information nor way of knowing who is attacking where. What we are seeing in Syria is that the violence is continuing from many quarters, and that's something we would like to see. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm not very good at the microphones.
My first of the year, so you beat me. You're ahead of me.
Hi, I'm the EU correspondent with RTE Irish Media.
Hi.
Hi, I wanted to ask a question about the what you just mentioned, the High Commissioner of Human Rights, Volker Turk, making a comment on the calling for the release of all those arbitrarily detained. Will he be extending that to include the detained Uyghurs of Xinjiang, as detailed in the report by his predecessor, Michelle Bachelet?
Well, I think it is clear on his statement when he talks about people who are being arbitrarily detained, he means people arbitrarily detained around the world. Full stop. There's no caveat to that. On the issue of the report and his follow-up, how that proceeds, that's within his mandate. You should be asking them. Okay. James, you look like you're itching.
Just on the Ukrainian proposal at the end of the year for peace talks, has the Secretary General himself been engaged on that? Has he had any discussions with the Ukrainian Foreign Minister, with President Zelensky? Has he had any outreach over the festive period, holiday period, with the Russians? And has he been in touch with the Turks?
He, Secretary General has been while on leave. Has had some contacts. He and I spoke about it just before the new year when the news broke. And what he said to me was very clear, is like he is always willing to mediate if both parties want him to mediate, which is, in a sense, what he would say about any conflict going around the world. And I'm sure once he's back in New York, he will be more fully briefed on the issue. Abdelhamid, and then Betul. And then I'll
news say that the Sudanese parties had reached some kind of agreement between the military component and two civilian groups. Do you have any details of that? Is the UN involved with this new agreement?
I will check.
Steph, a question on Syria. We know that the Security Council started negotiations on renewing the cross-border aid mechanism into Syria, and if they can't reach an agreement, the mechanism will expire in less than a week. And has the Secretary General or Martin Griffiths' office been informed about the latest on the negotiations, and are you prepared if the mechanism is not renewed? What happens?
What happens is that millions of people will suffer. That's what will happen. Right? We've been very clear on the need to extend the mechanism. The cross-line delivery of aid is very important, and we've been working on that through that as well. But that alone cannot meet the needs that we are needing through the cross-border delivery of aid. We have contingency plans for just about any situation, but one cannot replace the cross line alone cannot do the work that it is doing with the cross border. So what will happen is that people will suffer. Will stop. Mr. Griffiths and our colleagues in humanitarian affairs are following this closely, and we remain ready and continue to engage with member states who may have questions and queries on it. But at the end of the day, it is a Security Council decision, and I think Secretary General, Mr. Griffiths, and all have been extremely clear on the critical need to continue this. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm James Martone from a shop. I just came. This is my
Welcome.
second
This
day.
is,
Thank you
this
so
is
much.
like it's almost like September, like you kids in class. Welcome.
I wanted to ask about Yemen. The U.S. envoy to Yemen just got back and said he was there advancing the UN-backed peace initiative in Yemen. Which leads me, has there been any talk between the UN and the U.S. peace envoy regarding Yemen? What's the latest in terms of the UN?
Well, we continue to remain engaged with all our interlocutors, whether it's Yemeni interlocutors, regional interlocutors, and of course U.S. and others. While there's been no formal extension of the cessation of hostilities, it's clear that we've also, thank God, not seen any major eruptions, and we've been able to see civilian flights continue. We've been able to see resources going to Hodeida, even without a formal extension. But we continue our efforts on that road in trying to make sure that the gains are solidified and we can move even further. Yes.
Thank you, Stefan. Yesterday, Tehran announced it's pursuing dozens of people it accuses of involvement in the killing of Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general, and a lot of them are non-Iranians as well. And Iran has also vowed decisive response to the French magazine Charlie Hebdo for publishing a cartoon they find insulting of Khamenei. And 18,000 protesters remain in custody. Executions without due process are still being planned. And my question is, what is the UN doing diplomatically to deter the Islamic Republic from threatening the international community and its own people?
There's a lot in there. We continue to express the same opinion we've been expressing since the beginning of this demonstration, which is ensuring that people have a right to demonstrate peacefully, encouraging the government in Tehran to engage with those people who have legitimate issues, especially concerning the rights of women and girls. These are messages that have been passed directly from the Secretary General to various Iranian leaders, and we will continue to do that. On the issue of Charlie Hebdo, frankly, I'm not aware of the particular details, but we continue to believe in the right of in the right of free speech and expression for journalists.
The widespread speculation in Iran, what they believe is that condemnation from the UN is not going to stop the Islamic Republic and deter them from committing all these crimes. So is there anything other than words of condemnation that the UN is planning?
I mean, in terms of there are other parts of the UN that may have acted, that have moved, whether it's various human rights mechanism. I can only speak for the Secretary General. You know as well as I do what the authority of the Secretary General is, which is enshrined in the Charter. And what I can tell you is that he's been making statements publicly, but he's also been engaging in closed-door discussions with various Iranian leaders at various points. Alan.
I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Stefan. I have a question on Ukraine, please. Not so long time ago, former Chancellor Merkel twice said that the Minsk agreements allowed to, quote, gain additional time for Ukraine to become stronger, unquote. And after that, former President Francois Hollande just echoed this statement, who was a broker of these Minsk agreements as well. I'm wondering, from the perspective of the SG, to what extent did these statements reflect his attitude to the Minsk agreements? That basically, I mean, such kind of words might be a sign that, hey, they were not supposed to be implemented from the very beginning?
It's a very legitimate question, Alan, but I will leave the historical analysis to reporters, to former officials, and to historians. We are very much focused on today and trying to put an end to this bloody war. Well, let me just come back to you. I'm just going to take the question online. Oscar, I think you had a question. While Oscar connects, I will take.
Just a very quick question. As you know, Ireland has just stepped down from the Security Council. What will the Secretary General miss most about the Irish on the Security Council?
I think there's so much I already miss about the Irish. I think Ireland, which as you said, just finished its term, has shown what clear and forceful engagement on behalf of an elected member and what the impact that can have on moving issues forward, and showing the importance of active leadership from the elected members. Okay, Oscar, going once, twice. Adjugé, vendu. All right, goodbye. See you tomorrow. No Paulina until the 9th. What? Oh, it's a Monday. What?
Zoom IT News, Caribbean Television Network, plus de 10 sites internet, en anglais, français, espagnol et plus d'une centaine d'autres langues. Désormais, vous n'avez plus besoin d'un ordinateur ou d'un téléphone portable. Il suffit de demander à Alexa.
Alexa, what are the latest news from the Caribbean Television Network?
From Caribbean Television Network News. From Zoom Haiti News Daily.
En Zoom Haiti News, français.
En Zoom Haiti News espagnol.
Caribbean Television Network, en français, anglais et espagnol. Vous pouvez aussi télécharger les applications de Zoom Haiti News en créole, français, anglais et espagnol. Visitez notre site internet sur www.caribbeantelevisionnetwork.com.
La jeunesse vient tande. Yo di Covid ale, mais c'est pas vrai. Virus là, l'a muté, l'a transformé et l'a continué vers le terrain. L'a évolué rapidement et c'est nous toutes qui pour mobiliser pour nous couper coronavirus ça. On nous continue prendre toutes mes précautions nous te kan prend déjà yo. Si vous pas vacciné, al prend vaccin. Si vous te prend des premières doses, al prend booster. Toujours songer mettre masque. Lavez-moi souvent. Évitez en l'enfoule sous déjà un problème santé. Renforcer le système immunitaire, respecter consignes CDC et recommandations fait dans l'état côté va vivre là. Coronavirus là li nan mitan nous toujours. Li pas obligé fatal. Alors c'est mettre corps qui pour veiller corps. Mais ça c'est United Front of the Haitian Diaspora qui porte pour nous en conjonction avec aucun chaîne de travail à faire avec Morehouse School of Medicine. Pour plus d'informations, visitez site internet yo dans www.haitianunitedfront.org ou ncrn.msm.edu ou bien relais dans 202 918 69 92.